Let's bring on our panel to talk a lot more about this. Former U.S. Senator Heidi Heitkamp is the founder of the One Country Project, also a CNBC contributor. And former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney is Actim's Strategic Advisors co-chair. And folks, welcome to both of you. Let's talk about this because I think there's a lot at play here. The idea of a billionaire's tax, what that means, what a wealth tax would mean in this country. We did talk a little bit about it yesterday, and Andrew pointed out that what Gavin Newsom is looking at as a wealth tax is very different than someone like an Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders is looking at as a wealth tax. So maybe we should just get our heads around the idea of what a wealth tax is first. And Senator Heitkamp, why don't you start with that? What we're talking about on a national level is a wealth tax something that looks at billionaires and says you're going to pay a one-time fee on this? Is it something that looks at, going after gains that have not yet been actually turned into cash? If these are paper gains on some of these situations, what do you think we're talking about at a national level?
Well, it's hard to know because they haven't really put pen to paper and showed us how this would work. And I think that in the past, wealth taxes have been basically taxes that are act like personal property taxes, which is you have a lot of personal property, we're going to tax you at a certain level of value of that personal property, and it's up to you to value it without realizing any gain. And these have been wildly unpopular and very questionable as a matter of law, certainly under the federal income tax structure. So there's a lot of ways that you can look at how you can expand the tax base so that wealthier people would pay more. Things like carried interest, like stopping stepped up basis, like increasing taxes on capital gains. But there's been no real dialogue about what they look like. And, I used to administer taxes, and so I'm always curious, how do you think this is going to work? It's no surprise that Gavin Newsom is opposing it in California because he knows personal property can walk, which means it goes with the person. Its nexus is in the state where the person resides. And he knows the exodus will happen if California alone passes it. And so that's why he's pushing for a national solution. But these aren't well defined in terms of how they're going to be administered.
That's right. And Mick, I would add to that, he's probably pushing for a national solution at this point because we anticipate that he will be running for president. It would be hard to run for president on a Democratic ticket if he is opposed to any sort of wealth tax and has voted against it. At least that's my guess. It looks like the Democrats are leaning pretty far left in terms of the wealth tax at this point. What do you think?
It's a great way for him to sort of have his cake and eat it, too. He can appeal to the progressive left by saying, I want to soak the rich. I just want to do it at the national level, while still protect his state because he knows exactly what would happen because it's already happening in California. It's happening in a lot of high tax states. People are leaving. So what he's saying is, look, I'm for the wealth tax, and he can tell the progressives that. But to the moderates, he could say that he was against the wealth tax. It's a classic sort of you can have your cake and eat it, too. But at the end of the day, to your question about what it looks like, it doesn't mean a difference. What it is a way to prevent competition. High tax governments don't like low tax governments. They don't like competition. Instead of lowering their own tax rates to be competitive, they want other tax jurisdictions to raise theirs. And that's what this really is about. We knew this was going to happen. It started, I guess, overseas the last couple of years with this global minimum corporate tax. You're going to hear it more and more, Becky, about folks on the left saying it's not fair that Florida doesn't have an income tax. It's not fair that there are low tax states. We have to level the playing field and force these other states to raise their taxes. And that's what you use a national tax for.
Heidi, you're a former Democratic senator. You just described some of these wealth taxes, the ones that at least would go after unrealized gains, as being wildly unpopular. Do you still think that that's the case when you look at what will happen in primary voting?
Yeah, I think that what people see is they say, okay, first they come for people at a certain net income, then they come for me. And a lot of people still remember personal property taxes and remember how unfair they were. But the real challenge that you have here, and I know, we all want to talk about how do you deal with the wealth tax, but 90% of the wealth in this country is concentrated in the top 1%. And 32% of the income that you experience is at the top. And so when you look at kind of this growing wealth in disparity, that 80% of the people who are polled say this is not a direction that we want to go in this country, and 52% say they're very concerned about it. And so this is a problem that needs a solution. And every time you bring up the wealth tax, it's like, that's not the right solution. But what is the right solution? And so I throw this back to Mick. Is it okay that we have this level of wealth and disparity in our country? And what are the solutions to solving this problem? And quite honestly, when we're looking at debt and deficit at record amounts, cutting more taxes for anyone is not a solution we should be looking at.
Mick?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. Look, if you want to talk percentages, the top 1%, the last time I checked, pay 40% of the taxes already, so that's probably disproportionately heavy. But look, Heidi, if you want to look at different ways to sort of close this, look at other ways to raise revenue without actually raising taxes. I don't think the step up in basis in the estate tax makes a lot of sense. One of the things people are worried about is all these folks making all these capital gains, never paying tax on it, because what do? They borrow against that appreciated stock. They deduct the interest on that debt, and then they pass that wealth on to their children with a step up in basis, and the tax is never paid. There's something we could probably talk about on a bipartisan basis, right. But simply raising a wealth tax it's not going to solve the problem, because it doesn't force governments to make the difficult decisions. Look, there's two ways to balance your budget when you're in government. You can lower your expenditures, you could raise your revenues, or you could do a little bit of both. Look, if you want to have a conversation about doing both, that's fine, but for some reason we don't have that conversation in this country. We talk about, especially in California, Illinois, New York, it's only ever about raising taxes. And unfortunately, that's getting to be sort of the norm in Washington with both parties. They don't talk about really reducing spending. It's always raising revenue. So there's things you can do that are not economically sort of decimating like a wealth tax.